The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled like a field of stars. Its crystal walls stretched up into darkness, broken only by the soft glow of floating lights that danced like fireflies in the night. 2,000 representatives from across the galaxy sat in rising circles, their forms as varied as the planets they called home. Today was different from other meetings. The usual quiet buzz of conversation had turned into a storm of whispers. Earth had applied to join the Galactic Council, and no one quite knew what to make of it. High Leader Red Stone of the Star Empire stood up, his metallic scales catching the light as he moved. His people had ruled 30 star systems through pure military might, and everyone knew it. When he spoke, even the oldest council members listened. "My fellow representatives," he began, his translator making his harsh native language sound smooth, "we face an unusual problem today. The humans asked to join us, but I must point out something deeply troubling about their species." The whispers grew louder. On the lower level, the human ambassador sat quietly, hands folded in his lap. He showed no reaction to Red Stone's words. "These humans," Red Stone continued, "are afraid of war." He spat the last word like it was poison. "Look at their history. They spend more time writing peace treaties than fighting battles. They have more diplomats than warships. When two of their nations disagree, they talk for months instead of showing their strength." Many council members nodded. In their cultures, war was the natural way of things. Species fought, the strong won, and everyone understood their place. But humans? They were different. Their largest organization is something called the United Nations, Red Stone said, bringing up a hologram of the UN building. "Its main goal is to prevent wars. They have endless rules about how to fight, when to fight, and even who can fight. What kind of species fears conflict so much that they try to control it with paper and words?" The Star Empire leader paced back and forth, his tail swishing in agitation. "They even teach their young about the horrors of war instead of its glory. Their entertainment shows war as tragic instead of triumphant. Their leaders win praise for avoiding battles instead of winning them." More representatives were nodding now. Even the peaceful plant beings from the oxygen worlds seemed convinced. After all, every species in the council had earned their place through combat prowess at some point. And now, Red Stone's voice rose, "These war-fearing humans want to join us. The Galactic Council has stood for 10,000 years as a gathering of the strongest species in known space. How can we accept a species that runs from conflict instead of embracing it?" The chamber erupted in shouts of agreement. Some representatives stood, pounding their appendages on their desks. Others changed colors to show their approval, turning the hall into a rainbow of support for Red Stone's words. Only the human ambassador remained still. He hadn't moved since Red Stone began speaking. His face showed no anger, no fear, no hurt pride. He simply waited, watching everything with calm eyes that had seen more than most in the room could guess. Red Stone raised all 4 of his arms for silence. When the chamber quieted, he delivered his final blow. "I suggest we reject Earth's application. A species that fears war has no place among those who understand its necessity. Let them hide on their little planet with their peace treaties and their rules. The galaxy is no place for cowards." The word cowards echoed through the chamber, bouncing off the crystal walls. Now finally, the human ambassador moved. He stood slowly, straightening his simple black suit. The chamber fell silent as he walked toward the speaker's platform. No one knew it yet, but everything they thought they knew about humanity was about to change. Red Stone had spoken for his people. Now it was humanity's turn to respond. Ambassador James West walked to the speaking platform with steady steps. At 60 years old, his hair had turned gray, but his back was straight and his blue eyes were sharp. A thin scar ran from his left ear to his jaw, barely visible unless the light hit it just right. He had earned it 30 years ago, in humanity's last major war. The council chamber was so quiet you could hear the soft hum of the gravity generators. 2,000 pairs of eyes, some with multiple pupils, all focused on this single human. They expected to see him trembling, or perhaps angry. Instead, he looked perfectly calm as he reached the platform. West touched the control panel, and his translator activated with a soft chime. Unlike most species who needed complex machines to communicate, humans had learned so many languages that their translators were simple devices. This was the first surprise for many in the room. "Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice clear and steady. "I must thank High Leader Redstone for his interesting view of humanity." A few nervous laughs echoed through the chamber. No one had ever dared to sound amused when addressing the Star Empire's leader. West's fingers moved across the control panel again. The hall's main display lit up with an image that made several representatives gasp. It showed a younger version of West in a military uniform, leading a team through burning ruins. 30 years ago, I was a soldier," he said simply. "The scar on my face came from a plasma burst that killed 3 of my friends. I've seen war up close. I've fought in it. I've bled in it." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And I've stopped it from happening 17 times since becoming a diplomat." The chamber stirred. This didn't fit their image of a war-fearing species. The human continued, changing the display to show a massive warship hanging in orbit around Earth. "This is the EDS Peacekeeper," West explained. "One of our smaller vessels. We named it that because its main job is to prevent wars, not fight them. Some might call that fear." He smiled slightly. "We call it wisdom." Redstone's scales flashed with anger. Pretty words from a species that hides behind treaties. West didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled something from his pocket. A small metal object that made the security systems buzz with warning. "This is a bullet," he said, holding it up. "An ancient human weapon. Very simple. Just metal and explosive powder. We started with these." He set the bullet on the podium. "Would you like to know what we have now?" His voice was still calm, but something in it made several representatives shift uneasily in their seats. "Would you like to know why we work so hard to prevent wars?" The display changed again, showing a peaceful Earth city. "My species built this after destroying the one that stood there before. We rebuilt it better, stronger, more beautiful. Because we learned something that High Leader Redstone hasn't yet understood. Destruction is easy. Creation is hard." West straightened his suit jacket, a gesture that drew attention to a small pin on his lapel. Those with sharp eyes could see it showed a dove carrying an olive branch and a sword. "You call us war-fearing," he continued, "but you don't understand what that means. We don't fear war because we're weak. We fear it because we're very, very good at it. Too good. And now, if you'll permit me, I'll show you exactly what I mean." The ambassador's hand hovered over the control panel. In the suddenly tense silence, Redstone's earlier accusations seemed to hang in the air like smoke. But now that smoke was starting to smell like something burning, and the council was about to learn that fearing war and being prepared for it were 2 very different things. West smiled again, and this time there was something ancient in that smile, something that reminded the watching aliens that humans had climbed to the stars over the bones of their own battlefields. "Let me tell you about humanity's relationship with war," he said softly. "I promise you, it's not quite what you think." The great display in the council chamber flickered, and the peaceful city vanished. In its place appeared a battlefield from Earth's past. Smoke filled the sky, and machines of war rolled across broken ground. The image was so clear that several representatives could smell phantom smoke. "This was World War II," West said quietly. "It ended 80 years ago. 20 million soldiers died. 40 million civilians. Children, parents, whole families gone in moments." He let the numbers hang in the air. Even Redstone's scales had dulled their shine. The image changed again. Now it showed a mushroom cloud rising into the sky, its terrible beauty making the chamber fall even more silent. "We split the atom," West continued, "and used it as a weapon. Twice. The cities we destroyed haunted our dreams for generations. They still do. He touched his scar absently. You see, we became very good at killing. Too good. And that scared us more than any enemy ever could. A new image appeared, a room full of humans in suits, signing papers. Many council members shifted uncomfortably, preferring the war images to this boring scene. But West's next words caught their attention. This is when we started to change. We looked at our weapons, at our dead, at our burning cities, and we asked ourselves, what if we put all this energy, all this creativity, into preventing wars instead of fighting them? The display split into multiple screens. Each showed different scenes: submarines larger than buildings, aircraft that could vanish from radar, satellites that could spot a single person from space. We didn't stop preparing for war, West explained. We just got smarter about it. Every weapon we built had one purpose: to make our enemies think twice about fighting us. When you know your enemy can destroy your entire fleet from orbit, you're more willing to talk. Redstone stood up again. You prove my point. These weapons sit unused while you hide behind words. West's smile didn't waver. High Leader, have you ever wondered why humans seem to have so few warships? Why our military appears so small compared to yours? The display changed again, showing what looked like empty space. Look closer, West suggested. The council members leaned forward. At first, they saw nothing. Then, slowly, shapes began to emerge. Massive ships, their surfaces bending light around them. Stations that had been perfectly hidden against the stars. A whole fleet, invisible until now. We don't show off our weapons, West said. We don't brag about our wars. Because we learned something important. The best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know about until it's too late. He touched another control, and the images began changing faster. Earth's wars played out in quick succession, each bloodier than the last, until they suddenly stopped. In their place came images of peace talks, technological advances, and prosperity. You call us war-fearing. West's voice grew stronger, but you don't understand what real fear taught us. We learned to fear war just enough to get better at it than anyone else. We learned to hide our strength because visible power invites challenge. Most importantly, we learned that the greatest victory is the battle you don't have to fight. The display went dark, leaving the chamber in shadows. In the dim light, West's eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. Now, he said, would you like to know what else we've been hiding? What other lessons our fear has taught us? He paused, looking directly at Redstone. Or would you prefer to keep believing that our fear of war makes us weak? The chamber remained silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of judgment, but the silence of dawning realization. They had misunderstood humanity's fear of war, and they were just beginning to understand how dangerous that mistake might be. West touched the control panel again, and a small metal sphere appeared floating above the podium. It was no bigger than his fist, its surface smooth and unremarkable. Several council members leaned forward, trying to understand its significance. This, West said, is how humans fight wars now. He gestured at the hologram. One sphere, carrying 10,000 nanobots, each programmed to disable weapons, shut down ships, or protect civilians. No blood, no death, just the quiet end of someone's ability to wage war. Redstone scales rippled with disbelief. Impossible. Such technology was developed precisely because we fear war, West interrupted calmly. The sphere in the display split apart, showing its inner workings. When you're afraid of something, you study it. You learn everything about it, and then you find ways to control it. The display changed to show a massive space battle. Council members watched in awe as two fleets clashed among the stars. Then West pressed another button, and the image froze. This isn't real, he explained. It's a simulation. We run millions of them every day. Our computers calculate every possible way a war could start, every way it could end. We know the cost of each battle before it happens. That's why we work so hard to prevent them." He walked around the podium, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. "You think we write peace treaties because we're afraid to fight. We write them because we know exactly what will happen if we don't." The display changed again, showing Earth's orbital defense network. What had seemed like a simple collection of satellites now revealed itself as something far more complex. Each satellite contained technology that made even the most advanced Council species look primitive. "We don't build warships like yours," West continued, "because we don't need to. Our fear taught us to think differently. Why build 1,000 ships when one satellite can protect an entire planet? Why train millions of soldiers when a handful of AI systems can predict and prevent any attack?" A new image appeared, a map of known space, with Earth marked as a small blue dot. Around it, spreading out in all directions, were thousands of tiny points of light. "These are our monitoring stations," West explained. "Too small to see, too quiet to detect. They watch, they listen, they learn. Because that's what fear taught us to do. We don't just prepare for the wars we know about, we prepare for the ones we can imagine." Redstone had remained standing, but his proud posture had changed. He looked uncertain for the first time. "If what you say is true, why reveal this now?" West smiled, and it was a gentle expression that somehow made it more unsettling. "Because you needed to understand. Humanity doesn't fear war because we're weak. We fear it because we know exactly how strong we are." He waved his hand, and the display showed a final image: Earth's full defense capabilities. The chamber erupted in gasps and murmurs. Hidden fleets, automated defense systems, weapons that could end wars before they began. All developed in secret while humanity talked about peace. "We fear war," West said softly, "the way a doctor fears disease. Not because it threatens us, but because we know intimately how it destroys everything it touches. And like doctors, we've learned to fight it in ways you never imagined." The display went dark one last time, leaving only West's silhouette against the starlit chamber walls. "So yes, High Leader Redstone, humanity fears war. We fear it enough to make sure we never lose one. We fear it enough to end it before it begins. Most importantly," he paused, looking around the chamber, "we fear it enough to do whatever it takes to prevent it." The silence that followed was absolute. 2,000 representatives sat frozen, realizing that everything they thought they knew about humanity had been wrong. They hadn't been dealing with a species that feared war because of weakness. They had been dealing with one that feared it enough to become invincible. "But perhaps," West said into the stunned silence, "you need more proof." He touched the control panel once more. "With the Council's permission, I'd like to access the galactic archives." The Council leader, a tall being with crystalline skin, hesitated before nodding. No species had ever dared to use the archives during a membership hearing. The great database contained records of every space battle, every war, and every conflict in known space for the past 10,000 years. "Display species advancement rates," West commanded. The air filled with streams of data, showing how quickly different civilizations had developed technology. "Now highlight all species that made war their primary means of advancement." Red dots appeared across the data streams. They made up nearly every point on the display. "And now," West's voice carried clearly through the chamber, "show Earth's advancement rate." A blue line shot through the data, climbing so steeply that several representatives stood up in shock. The line rose far above the others, showing technological growth at a rate that seemed impossible. "This is what fear of war gave us," West explained. "While other species spent resources fighting, we spent them learning. While they perfected ways to destroy, we perfected ways to prevent destruction. Our fear didn't slow us down, it launched us forward." He zoomed in on the last 50 years of data. "Look at the Star Empire's growth rate." The display highlighted Redstone's civilization. In 50 years of constant warfare, they developed 15 new weapon systems. The data shifted. In the same time, focusing on prevention, Earth developed over 200. Redstone scales had turned almost white. But we've never seen these weapons. Exactly. West smiled. The best innovations are the ones your potential enemies don't know about. While the galaxy watched us write peace treaties, we were building something far more powerful than a war fleet. The display changed to show Earth's patent office records. Thousands of innovations scrolled past. Force fields disguised as communication satellites, defense systems hidden in weather stations, warships that could fold space itself. Every time we felt afraid, West continued, we created something new. Not to fight wars, but to prevent them. Fear taught us to think ahead, to solve problems before they became conflicts. He brought up a new set of data, showing conflict resolution rates across the galaxy. The Star Empire wins 90% of its wars, he noted. Earth's statistics appeared next to it. We prevent 99% of ours from even starting. The chamber had grown so quiet that the hum of the data displays seemed loud. West walked slowly around the podium, letting his words sink in. You see, the galaxy has been measuring power wrong, he said. You count victories in battle. We count battles that never needed to happen. You measure strength by how well you fight. We measure it by how rarely we need to. He pressed one final button, and the display showed the known galaxy. Tiny dots of light marked every armed conflict currently happening in space. They clustered thickly around militant empires, but stopped abruptly at the edges of Earth's sphere of influence. This is real power, West said softly. Not the ability to win wars, but the ability to maintain peace. Even your own data proves it. The most advanced species in the galaxy isn't the one that fights best. It's the one that's learned how to fight least. The council members stared at the display, seeing their galaxy in a new light. Everything they had believed about power, about warfare, about advancement itself, was being challenged. So yes, West concluded, humanity fears war. And that fear has made us stronger than any species that loves it. Would you like to know what else that fear has taught us to build? In the profound silence that followed, the council realized they were facing a choice. Continue believing in the power of warfare, or accept that humanity's fear of war had created something far more formidable than any battle fleet. West picked up the bullet he had placed on the podium earlier. The simple piece of metal caught the light as he held it up. 2,000 years ago, he began, a human leader said something that changed how we think about war. He said, if you want peace, prepare for war. At first, it seems like a contradiction, but this small bullet helps explain it. He walked to Redstone's platform, holding out the bullet. The Star Empire leader took it carefully, his clawed hands making the small object look even tinier. We started with things like this, West continued, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. Simple weapons, brutal weapons. We used them to hurt, to kill, to conquer. Just like every other species in this room. He turned to address the whole council. But then we did something different. We started asking questions. Not just how do we win, but why do we fight? Not just how do we kill, but how do we prevent killing? The main display lit up again, showing scenes from Earth's history. But this time, instead of battles, it showed laboratories, universities, and research centers. Our fear made us curious, West explained. We studied war like scientists study disease. We broke it down, understood its patterns, its causes, its cures. The more we feared it, the more we learned about it. And the more we learned, the better we became at preventing it. He brought up an image of Earth's first nuclear weapons test. When we built our most terrible weapons, we didn't celebrate. We were horrified. That horror, that fear, drove us to create something new. The idea that the best weapon is one you never have to use. Redstone looked up from the bullet in his hands. But what about honor? Glory? The pride of victory? West's expression softened. We found a different kind of honor. the honor of saving lives instead of taking them, the glory of preventing destruction instead of causing it, the pride of keeping peace instead of disrupting it. He touched his scar again, a gesture that had become familiar to the council members. I got this scar in what we call the last war, not because we couldn't fight anymore, but because we finally understood how to prevent war so well that we didn't need to. The display changed to show Earth's global defense network again, but this time it highlighted something new. Thousands of diplomatic channels, communication links, and cultural exchange programs. Our fear taught us that real strength isn't about having the biggest guns, West said. It's about having so many ways to prevent war that your guns can stay silent. It's about being so good at peace that your enemies become your allies before they become your enemies. He walked back to the podium, his steps echoing. You call us cowards because we fear war. But ask yourselves this: who is truly stronger? The species that rushes into battle without understanding its cost, or the species that has mastered war so completely that they can prevent it entirely? West pressed a final button, and the display showed a split screen. On one side, the Star Empire's bloody path of conquest; on the other, Earth's expanding sphere of peaceful influence. Look at the results, he said quietly. Your way leads to endless cycles of violence. Our way, he gestured to Earth's side of the display, leads to something better, something stronger, something that lasts. He turned to face Redstone directly. You're right. We do fear war. We fear it the way a master swordsman fears his blade, not because he can't use it, but because he understands exactly how deadly it is. And that understanding makes him far more dangerous than someone who swings their sword without fear. The chamber remained silent as the council members wrestled with this new perspective. They had come expecting to judge humanity's weakness. Instead, they found themselves questioning everything they had ever believed about strength. And now, West said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, let me show you what humanity's fear has truly built. He pressed a small button on his collar, one that no council member had noticed before. The chamber's lights dimmed, but not because of any command to the building systems. Something was blocking the starlight from the crystal walls. Redstone was the first to realize what they were seeing. His scales shifted to a pale blue, a sign of shock in his species. Outside the council chamber, surrounding the entire building, was a human fleet that had appeared from nowhere. 200 ships, West said calmly, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent, each crewed by AIs that can fight 1,000 battles in the time it takes organic beings to decide to pull a trigger, each hidden by technology that your best sensors can't detect. The display screen showed close-ups of the ships. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, all smooth lines and dark metal that seemed to drink in light. No weapons were visible on their hulls, but every council member knew that meant the weapons were far worse than any they could imagine. But these ships aren't the real demonstration, West continued. He waved his hand, and new images appeared. While I've been speaking, our systems have been analyzing every defense, every weapon, and every strategy your civilizations have. In 3 minutes, we've learned enough to neutralize any military action against Earth for the next 1,000 years. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Several military representatives reached for their communication devices, only to find them dead. Don't worry, West smiled. Your communications will work again in a moment. We just wanted to make a point. You see, this is what fear taught us. The best defense isn't just about having powerful weapons. It's about having options your opponent doesn't even know exist. He turned to Redstone, who still held the bullet in his trembling claws. That antique in your hands. We keep it as a reminder that we started just like you, thinking strength meant the ability to destroy. But fear taught us better. Fear taught us that true strength is having the power to destroy everything, and choosing not to. The fleet outside the chamber began to fade away, ship by ship, returning to their perfect invisibility. West's next words fell into the stunned silence like stones into still water. Earth doesn't want to join the Galactic Council because we need allies. We want to join because we believe sharing knowledge is better than hoarding it. Because we believe teaching peace is better than enforcing it. Because we believe that even species who love war can learn to fear it wisely. He looked around the chamber one last time. You called us cowards because we fear war. The truth is, we fear war enough to master it completely. We fear it enough to end it before it begins. We fear it enough to make peace so strong that war becomes unthinkable. Red Stone stood slowly. The mighty leader of the Star Empire looked different now, humbled, but somehow wiser. He raised all four of his arms in the traditional gesture of respect. I withdraw my objection to Earth's membership, he said, his voice ringing through the chamber. And I move that we accept their application immediately. The vote was unanimous. As West watched the council members signal their approval one by one, he touched the small pin on his ladle, the dove carrying both olive branch and sword. It had been humanity's greatest gamble, to show the galaxy that their greatest weakness was actually their greatest strength. As he prepared to leave the podium, West shared one final thought. Remember this day, honored representatives, not as the day you learned to fear humanity, but as the day you learned why fearing war makes us the strongest species of all. The council chamber slowly returned to its normal brightness, but nothing else would ever be quite the same. The galaxy had just learned that peace wasn't the absence of strength, it was the presence of wisdom, and humanity's fear of war had given them both in abundance.